The sharp crack of Grayson's palm against Ezra's cheek echoed through the opulent ballroom like a thunderclap, silencing the chatter of New York's elite tech moguls and investors. In that single, devastating moment, the CEO of Hale Innovations knew he had crossed a line he could never uncross. But what he didn't realize was that his world was about to shatter in ways that would force him to confront the truth he had buried for years. Ezra staggered back a step, his hand flying to the red mark blooming on his face, eyes wide with disbelief rather than anger. The crystal chandeliers above seemed to dim as every head in the room turned toward them. Grayson stood frozen, his chest heaving under the tailored black tuxedo, the sting in his palm nothing compared to the sudden hollow pit in his stomach. Marcus, his longtime vice president and supposed best friend, had pulled him aside only minutes earlier with a whispered warning. Ezra's been meeting with the rival team from Vertex Tech. He's selling you out, Gray. I saw the emails. He's using what he knows about you to destroy everything. Grayson, already on edge from his parents' latest call, demanding he finally set a wedding date with his fiancée, had snapped. In front of 200 witnesses, he had accused Ezra of betrayal and struck him. Now the silence stretched, broken only by the faint clink of a champagne glass somewhere in the back. Ezra's voice came out low and steady, though his eyes glistened. Is that really what you think of me, Grayson? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned on his heel and walked straight through the parting crowd toward the exit, shoulders squared with a dignity that made Grayson's regret twist like a knife. Grayson wanted to call out, but his throat had closed. Security hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene. He forced a tight smile at the nearest board member and muttered something about a misunderstanding, then strode after Ezra, the polished marble floor suddenly feeling like quicksand. Outside in the marble hallway of the Grand Plaza Hotel, he caught up just as Ezra reached the elevator. Wait, Ezra, stop. Ezra pressed the button without turning. You made your point in there, sir. The formal title cut deeper than any slap could have. Grayson reached for his arm but stopped short, remembering the hundreds of eyes still watching from the ballroom doors. Marcus showed me proof. You were talking to their lead developer last week. He said you mentioned my private notes. Ezra finally faced him, the elevator doors sliding open behind him. His dark hair was slightly disheveled now, but his gaze held no fear, only a quiet exhaustion that Grayson had never noticed before. Those private notes were about the merger data I protected, not whatever Marcus told you. I turned down their offer because I believed in you. I always have. The doors began to close. Maybe you should ask yourself why you believed him so fast. The elevator swallowed Ezra whole, and Grayson stood alone in the hallway, the distant hum of the Gala mocking him. He pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and opened the email Marcus had forwarded. Something felt off, the wording too perfect, the timestamp suspicious. His mind raced back 3 years to the day Ezra had walked into his office for the first interview. Resume in hand, quiet confidence radiating from every word. Grayson had hired him on the spot, not just for his Harvard degree but for the way he looked straight into Grayson's eyes without flinching. Over time Ezra had become more than an assistant. He remembered late nights in the boardroom, shared coffee runs, the way Ezra always knew when Grayson needed silence instead of advice. And always, that unspoken pull Grayson had shoved down so deep he almost believed it didn't exist. He had told himself it was admiration, professional respect. He had dated women, proposed to one to please his traditional parents back in Connecticut, attended every family dinner pretending the future they wanted for him was the one he wanted too. But standing there now, the red mark on Ezra's cheek burned in his memory like an accusation. What if Marcus had lied? What if the real threat wasn't Ezra at all? Grayson turned back toward the ballroom, but his feet carried him instead to the side exit. He needed air. Outside on the bustling Manhattan sidewalk, the cool October wind slapped him harder than he had slapped Ezra. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Darling, the wedding planner called again. We need a date before the holidays. He deleted it without replying. For the first time in years, the weight of pretending felt heavier than the fear of truth. He flagged a cab and gave the driver Ezra's Brooklyn address, the one he had memorized from expense reports but never visited. The ride across the bridge gave him too much time to think. He remembered the Christmas party last year when Ezra had stayed late to help wrap the company gifts for the staff kids. They had laughed over cheap wine until the city lights blurred outside the window. Grayson had almost reached for his hand that night. Almost. Instead, he had pulled back, mumbled something about an early meeting, and driven home to his empty penthouse. Now that almost felt like the biggest mistake of his life. The cab stopped in front of a modest brownstone. Grayson paid and stood on the stoop, heart hammering. He knocked once, twice. No answer. He tried the handle and found it unlocked. Inside the small living room, Ezra sat on the couch, jacket off, tie loosened, staring at the wall. A single lamp cast long shadows. He didn't look surprised to see Grayson. "You shouldn't be here." Grayson stepped inside and closed the door softly. "I need to know the truth. All of it." Ezra stood slowly, the mark on his cheek still visible under the light. "The truth is I've been covering for you for 3 years. When your parents started digging into your personal life, when Marcus began asking questions about your late nights, I deleted files, rerouted calls, lied to protect the secret you never asked me to keep. Because I saw you, Grayson. I saw the man you hide from everyone else." His voice cracked just slightly. "And tonight you chose to believe the one person who wanted to tear you down instead of the one who's been standing beside you." Grayson felt the floor tilt. He sank into the nearest chair, head in his hands. The pieces clicked into place, ugly and undeniable. Marcus had always pushed for the Vertex merger on his own terms. He had been jealous of Ezra's closeness to the CEO. The emails were forged. And Grayson, terrified of what those private notes really revealed about his own feelings, had reacted with violence instead of trust. "I was scared," he whispered, the words tasting like ash. "Scared of what everyone would say if they knew." Ezra crossed his arms, not moving closer. "Scared enough to hit me in front of the entire industry?" Grayson looked up, eyes burning. "I was wrong. God, Ezra, I'm so sorry." The apology hung between them, fragile and raw. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, reminding him the world hadn't stopped turning. But inside the small apartment, everything had changed. Grayson stood, took one hesitant step forward, and for the first time didn't pull away from the truth staring back at him in Ezra's steady gaze. Ezra didn't flinch when Grayson reached for him, but he didn't lean in either. The space between them felt charged with 3 years of unspoken words and one public betrayal that could never be taken back. "Sorry doesn't erase what happened in that room," Ezra said quietly. "People saw. Investors saw. By morning the rumors will be everywhere." Grayson nodded, throat tight. He had built Hale Innovations from a garage startup into a billion-dollar force through sheer will and flawless control. Now that control lay in pieces at his feet. "I'll fix it. I'll call a press conference. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." Ezra gave a short, bitter laugh. "A misunderstanding? You slapped me because you thought I was out to destroy you. Because someone fed you a lie about my loyalty. Tell me, Grayson, was it easier to believe I could betray you than to admit why you really panicked?" The question landed like a second slap. Grayson sank back into the chair, the leather creaking under his weight. He thought of his father, the stern judge who still referred to those people with a curl of his lip at Thanksgiving dinners. His mother, who had already picked out the perfect Connecticut estate for Grayson and his fiancée, complete with white picket fence and future grandchildren. They had raised him to be the golden son, the one who would carry the family name without stain. Coming out had never been an option. It had been a death sentence for the life they planned. "I've been fighting this since college," Grayson admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Every time I looked at you across the conference table, every time you stayed late and we talked about anything but work, I told myself it was nothing. I dated women. I proposed to one. I thought if I just kept moving forward, the feeling would go away. He looked up, meeting Ezra's eyes. It never did. Ezra remained standing, arms still crossed like a shield. And hitting me was your way of proving that? No. It was my way of breaking. Marcus knew something. He's been digging for months. I think he wanted me distracted so he could push the merger his way. When he showed me those emails, I saw my whole life collapsing. The board, my parents, the press. I panicked and took it out on the only person who ever made me feel seen. Grayson's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and opened the email again. Look at the metadata. It's fake. He doctored it. Ezra finally stepped closer and took the phone. He scrolled silently, jaw tightening with each line. I met with Vertex last week because you asked me to scout their AI division. I reported everything back to you in the encrypted folder. Marcus was the one who suggested I go alone. He set me up. Grayson stood, the truth hitting him like cold water. He's been my friend since business school. I trusted him more than anyone. More than me, Ezra finished softly. The words hung heavy. Grayson reached for Ezra's hand this time and didn't let go when their fingers brushed. I was wrong about everything. About him. About what I thought I needed to be. About you. He swallowed hard. Stay. Let me make this right. Ezra pulled his hand away gently. I can't stay in that building tomorrow. Not after tonight. The stares, the whispers. I have some pride left. He walked to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn lights. I gave up a better salary at 3 other companies because I believed in what we were building. Because I believed in you. Now I need to figure out what I believe in next. Grayson felt the panic rise again. Different this time. Not fear of exposure, but fear of losing the one person who had quietly held his world together. Then don't come back to the office. Come back to me. As more than my assistant. Ezra turned, surprise flickering across his face for the first time that night. You don't get to decide that after one apology. I've watched you hide for 3 years. I've watched you choose the safe path every single time. One slap and a sudden confession don't change that overnight. Grayson stepped closer until only a foot separated them. The air felt thick with everything unsaid. Then give me time. Give me a chance to show you I'm done hiding. He thought of the gala still going on without him, of Marcus probably toasting his victory somewhere in the crowd. First thing tomorrow I'm confronting him. Publicly. Then I'm calling my parents. The engagement is off. I can't keep living half a life. Ezra studied him for a long moment, the mark on his cheek a vivid reminder of how far they had fallen in one evening. Finally he nodded once. Confront Marcus. Fix the damage at the company. Then we'll talk. But Grayson, if you run back to your safe little closet the moment things get hard, I'm gone for good. Grayson agreed, relief and terror mixing in his chest. He left the brownstone an hour later, the October wind sharper now. In the cab back to Manhattan, he drafted the email firing Marcus effective immediately and scheduled a board meeting for 9 a.m. His phone kept buzzing, texts from his mother, missed calls from his fiancée. He silenced them all. For the first time, the silence felt like freedom instead of fear. At his penthouse, he didn't sleep. He paced the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline and replayed every moment with Ezra. The quiet support during the merger crisis last year. The way Ezra had remembered his mother's birthday and sent flowers when Grayson forgot. The late-night strategy sessions where their knees had brushed under the table and neither had moved away. He had been blind. Willfully, cowardly blind. By dawn he was dressed in a fresh suit. The same one from the gala, now feeling like armor for a different battle. He arrived at Hale Innovations before anyone else, the glass tower still dark. He sat at his desk and wrote the statement he would read at the board meeting. No more lies. No more protection for a friend who had tried to destroy him. When the sun rose over the East River, Grayson felt the first real light he had seen in years. The board meeting was brutal. Marcus stormed in late, face pale when he saw the agenda. Grayson stood at the head of the long table and laid out the forged emails, the setup, the public assault that never should have happened. "I made a mistake last night," he said, voice steady even as his heart raced. "I let fear control me." But the real betrayal came from inside this room. He fired Marcus on the spot, security escorting him out while the board watched in stunned silence. Whispers rippled, but no one challenged the evidence. By noon, the internal memo had gone out. Ezra's name was cleared. A company-wide email apologized for the incident and praised Ezra's loyalty. Grayson sent a personal note to every major investor explaining the situation without revealing too much. The damage control was working, but it wasn't enough. He needed to fix the one thing that mattered most. He drove to Brooklyn again that afternoon, flowers in hand, heart in his throat. Ezra opened the door wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt, looking younger and more vulnerable than he ever did in the office. He accepted the flowers but didn't smile. "You did it," he said simply. "I saw the memo." Grayson stepped inside. "I meant every word. And I called my parents this morning. Told them the engagement is off. Told them why." His voice caught. "They didn't take it well. My father hung up. My mother cried. But I said it out loud for the first time. I'm gay. And I'm in love with my assistant." Ezra set the flowers down slowly. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and the Thai takeout containers on the counter. "You said that to them?" "I did. And now I'm saying it to you." Grayson took a step closer. "I love you, Ezra. Not as my assistant. Not as a secret. As the man who saw me when I couldn't see myself." The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Ezra's eyes softened. He reached out and touched the lapel of Grayson's suit, the same suit from the night before. "You still have a lot to prove. But I'm listening." For the first time since the slap, Grayson smiled. It was small, tentative, but real. Outside, the city kept moving, indifferent to the quiet revolution happening in a Brooklyn living room. Inside, two men stood on the edge of something new, fragile and terrifying and full of promise. The next weeks blurred into a whirlwind of damage control and tentative hope. Grayson cleared his schedule for the first time in years, handing day-to-day operations to his most trusted senior director. He spent mornings in therapy, afternoons walking the High Line with Ezra, evenings sitting on the brownstone stoop, talking until the streetlights flickered on. The conversations weren't easy. Ezra made him face every year of denial, every time he had pulled away, every lie he had told himself and others. "You can't just decide to be out and expect me to forget the slap," Ezra said one crisp November evening as they shared a bench in Prospect Park. Leaves crunched under their shoes, and the air smelled of roasted chestnuts from a nearby cart. "That moment lives in my body now. Every time I walk into a room, I wonder if people are remembering." Grayson nodded, staring at their joined hands. Public affection still felt new, dangerous, but he refused to let go. "I know, and I'll spend every day earning back your trust. I started a company fund in your name for LGBTQ plus tech scholarships. It's not enough, but it's a start." Ezra squeezed his fingers. "It's a start." The family fallout was harder. Grayson's mother flew down from Connecticut unannounced, arriving at his penthouse with a suitcase and a face full of disappointment. "This is a phase," she insisted over coffee in the kitchen. "Your father and I raised you better. Think of the company. Think of the grandchildren we were supposed to have." Grayson stood his ground. "This isn't a phase, Mom. This is me. Ezra isn't going anywhere." He showed her a photo on his phone, the two of them laughing on the rooftop last weekend. For a moment her expression softened, but then the walls came back up. "I need time," she said finally. "Your father won't even say your name right now." It hurt, but Grayson had expected it. What surprised him was the support from unexpected places. His head of marketing, a quiet woman named Lena, pulled him aside after a meeting and shared her own coming-out story from 10 years earlier. "It gets better," she told him, "but only if you keep choosing yourself every day." Ezra's circle welcomed Grayson cautiously. His best friend, a graphic designer named Jordan, met them for brunch in Williamsburg and grilled Grayson for 2 hours straight. "Hurt him again and I'll make sure every queer creator in Brooklyn blacklists you," Jordan warned with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Grayson respected the protectiveness. It showed how deeply Ezra was loved by people who had never required him to hide. Work slowly stabilized. The stock dipped after the Gala incident but recovered when the board announced new diversity initiatives and Ezra's promotion to chief of staff. Grayson made sure the announcement highlighted Ezra's contributions without sensationalizing their relationship. They kept things professional at the office, but the knowing glances from the team felt warm rather than judgmental. One Friday afternoon in early December, Grayson found Ezra in the executive lounge staring out at the snow beginning to fall over the city. "Come with me this weekend," he said quietly. "I booked a cabin upstate. No phones, no meetings. Just us." Ezra turned, a small smile finally breaking through. "You hate cabins. You said they were for people who didn't have penthouses." "I hate pretending more." They drove upstate that Saturday through flurries that turned the Hudson Valley into a postcard. The cabin was small and rustic, with a stone fireplace and a view of the frozen lake. No Wi-Fi, no expectations. They cooked pasta together, burned the garlic bread, laughed until their sides hurt. Later, sitting on the rug in front of the fire, Ezra rested his head on Grayson's shoulder. "I was ready to quit that night," he admitted. "I had the resignation letter drafted." Grayson tightened his arm around him. "I'm glad you didn't send it." "Me too." Ezra tilted his face up. Their first real kiss since the apology was soft and unhurried, tasting of red wine and forgiveness. It wasn't about passion or possession. It was about choosing each other in the light instead of the shadows. Grayson felt something inside him settle into place, a missing piece he had spent decades denying. But peace never lasted long. On Monday back in the city, Marcus filed a lawsuit claiming wrongful termination and defamation. The legal team warned it could drag on for months and dredge up every detail of Grayson's personal life. Grayson's father called for the first time in weeks, voice cold. "Drop this nonsense and come home. We'll fix the PR. The family name is more important than your phase." Grayson hung up and immediately called Ezra. "I need you tonight. Not as staff. As my partner." Ezra arrived at the penthouse with takeout and a quiet strength that steadied Grayson's nerves. They ate on the couch and talked strategy. Ezra suggested mediation instead of court, a public statement acknowledging mistakes without shame. "You've already come out to the people who matter," he said. "Don't let Marcus drag you back into the closet." That night they fell asleep together for the first time, fully clothed, Grayson's arm around Ezra's waist. The lawsuit loomed, family silence pressed in, but for the first time Grayson wasn't facing any of it alone. The mediation meeting took place 2 weeks later in a neutral conference room downtown. Marcus sat across the table looking smug until Ezra walked in beside Grayson as his official support person. The evidence against Marcus was ironclad: emails, bank records showing payments from Vertex. By the end of the day, Marcus agreed to drop the suit in exchange for a modest severance and a non-disclosure agreement. Outside on the sidewalk, snow falling softly, Grayson turned to Ezra. "We did it." Ezra brushed snow from Grayson's coat collar. "You did it. I just stood beside you." Grayson pulled him into a hug right there on the busy street, ignoring the curious glances. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." That evening they attended a small holiday party hosted by Lena from marketing. For the first time Grayson introduced Ezra as his partner without hesitation. The room applauded. Jordan raised a glass from across the room. Grayson's mother even sent a text later that night, short but hopeful. I'm trying. Send me a picture of the two of you at Christmas. Grayson showed Ezra the message. They stood on the rooftop terrace wrapped in one blanket, city lights sparkling below. It's not perfect, Grayson said. But it's real. Ezra leaned into him. Real is all I ever wanted. Winter deepened, and with it came the first real test of their new life together. Grayson's father suffered a mild heart scare in January, forcing an emergency trip to Connecticut. Grayson insisted Ezra come along, not as staff but as family. The drive up was quiet, both men bracing for the confrontation they knew was coming. The family home looked exactly as Grayson remembered. White colonial with perfectly trimmed hedges and American flags on either side of the door. His mother met them on the porch, hugging Grayson tightly before turning to Ezra with cautious politeness. "So you're the one," she said, offering a handshake instead of the usual embrace. Inside, his father sat in the study wearing a robe, looking frielier than Grayson had ever seen him. The conversation started civilly enough, talk of the company and the lawsuit settlement. Then his father fixed Ezra with a hard stare. "Young man, I need to know if you're the reason my son is throwing away everything we built for him." Ezra met the gaze without flinching. "I'm the reason he's finally living honestly, sir." The room went still. Grayson's mother busied herself with tea. His father leaned forward. "Honesty is one thing. Parading it in public is another. The board is still whispering. Clients are asking questions. What kind of example are you setting?" Grayson stepped between them. "The example of a man who refuses to lie anymore. I love him, Dad. And if that costs me the company, I'll start over. But I won't lose him." The words hung in the air like smoke. His father stared for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "I don't understand it. I probably never will. But I won't lose my son over it either." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall. They stayed for dinner, conversation stilted but civil. On the drive home, Ezra reached over and rested his hand on Grayson's knee. "You stood up for us. That's enough for now." Back in New York, the company hit a new milestone, landing a major government contract that required travel to Washington. Grayson and Ezra flew down together, sharing a hotel room without hiding. At the reception dinner, Ezra charmed senators and analysts alike, his quiet intelligence shining. Watching him across the table, Grayson felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. This was the life he had been afraid to claim, and it was better than any fantasy he had allowed himself. Yet old habits died hard. One evening after a long day of meetings, Grayson received a call from an old college friend who had heard the news. "Dude, are you serious? You and your assistant? What about all those girls you dated?" The laughter in the voice stung. Grayson hung up and found Ezra waiting in the hotel room with room service already set up. "Bad call?" Ezra asked, reading his face instantly. Grayson nodded and let himself be pulled into a hug. "Sometimes I still hear the old voices in my head telling me this is wrong." Ezra kissed his temple. "Then we drown them out with new ones." Together, they spent the rest of the trip exploring the city hand in hand, visiting the Lincoln Memorial at night and the Smithsonian during the day. Grayson posted a photo of them on his personal social media for the first time. Caption simple, "Grateful for the journey." The comments poured in, some supportive, some cruel. He read every one and then turned off notifications. The noise no longer controlled him. Spring arrived early that year. On a warm March weekend, they drove to the Hamptons to visit Ezra's parents, a retired teacher and a librarian who welcomed Grayson with open arms and homemade lasagna. "We've known since he was 15, his mother said over dessert. "We just waited for him to bring someone home worth meeting." Ezra blushed, and Grayson felt the warmth of belonging he had never known in his own childhood home. The contrast stayed with him. Two families, two worlds. One learning to bend, the other already open. He began making plans for a small commitment ceremony that summer. Nothing flashy, just close friends and the people who mattered. When he told Ezra over breakfast one Sunday, the look on his partner's face was worth every risk he had taken. But life had one more test waiting. In April, Vertex Tech approached Ezra with a senior vice president offer, double his current salary and full creative control. They met him at a sleek downtown restaurant, promising no drama, no mention of the past. Ezra came home that night and laid the offer letter on the kitchen counter. Grayson read it twice. "This is huge. You'd be crazy not to consider it." Ezra leaned against the counter. "I already turned it down." "Why?" "Because Hale Innovations isn't just a job anymore. It's our company. Ours. And I don't run from the places I love." Grayson crossed the room and kissed him deeply, tasting the certainty in the decision. "I don't deserve you. You deserve to be loved exactly as you are," Ezra replied. "And that's what I'm here for." That night they sat on the rooftop again, city humming below. Grayson realized the journey wasn't over. Acceptance wasn't a finish line but a daily choice. He had lost friends, strained family ties, and nearly destroyed the best relationship of his life with one moment of fear. But he had gained something priceless, himself. Summer brought the commitment ceremony they had quietly planned. They chose a small vineyard upstate, rows of grapevines heavy with fruit and a wooden arbor covered in white roses. Only 30 guests, the people who had walked the journey with them. Lena from marketing arrived with her wife. Jordan brought his boyfriend and a playlist of songs that made everyone laugh and cry. Grayson's mother came alone, his father still not ready, but she hugged Ezra tightly at the entrance and whispered, "Thank you for making my son brave." Ezra wore a simple linen suit the color of summer wheat. Grayson chose navy with a pocket square Ezra had given him on their first real date. They exchanged rings under the arbor as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in pinks and golds. No legal marriage yet, but the vows were deeper than any contract. Grayson spoke first, voice steady. "I spent years hiding from the truth. You showed me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to fight for every single day. I promise to keep choosing us, no matter what." Ezra's eyes shone. "I stayed because I saw the man you could become. Today I stand here not as your assistant, not as your secret, but as your partner in every sense. I promise to remind you who you are when the world tries to make you forget." They kissed as their small crowd cheered. Later, under string lights, they danced slowly while fireflies blinked in the vineyard. Grayson's mother took photos, already planning a larger family gathering for the holidays. Jordan toasted to the slap that started it all, turning the worst night into their origin story. The next morning they woke in the vineyard cottage to birdsong and the smell of fresh coffee. Ezra rolled over and traced the line of Grayson's jaw. "No regrets." "None," Grayson answered. "Only gratitude." They returned to the city renewed. The company continued to thrive, the diversity initiatives drawing top talent and new investors. Grayson began speaking at industry events about authentic leadership, never naming himself but sharing enough that others in the audience nodded with recognition. Ezra led a new mentorship program for young LGBTQ+ professionals, paying forward the support he had once given silently. Yet growth always invites new challenges. In late August, Grayson's father finally reached out. He wanted to meet, alone. Grayson drove to Connecticut on a Saturday, nerves tight. They sat on the back porch overlooking the same yard where Grayson had played as a boy. "I watched your speech online," his father said after a long silence. "You sounded like the son I raised, strong and honest. I don't understand your choices, but I see the man you've become. That's enough for me." It wasn't a full embrace, but it was a beginning. Grayson drove home with lighter shoulders and immediately told Ezra over the phone. He saw me. Not the version he wanted, but me. Ezra waited at the penthouse with champagne. To fathers who learned to bend. They toasted and talked late into the night about the future, maybe adopting one day, maybe expanding the scholarship fund. definitely traveling to places where they could hold hands without a second thought. Fall arrived with its usual rush of projects and deadlines. One October evening, exactly 1 year after the gala, Grayson stood on the same rooftop where they had celebrated so many milestones. He had arranged for the space to be filled with soft lights and the same playlist from their ceremony. When Ezra stepped off the elevator, surprise lit his face. Grayson took his hands. 1 year ago, I almost lost you because I was too afraid to see what was right in front of me. Tonight, I want to thank you for staying, for fighting, for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. He dropped to one knee and opened a small box. Inside was a simple platinum band engraved with their initials and the date of the slap, turned into a symbol of rebirth. Ezra Kane, will you marry me? Ezra's answer was immediate and tearful. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed under the city sky, the same sky that had witnessed every step of their journey. The next day they filed the paperwork at City Hall, surrounded by their chosen family. The ceremony would be small, but the life they were building was vast. The wedding took place the following spring in the same vineyard, this time with legal papers and a judge. Grayson's father walked him down the aisle. Ezra's parents beamed from the front row. Jordan officiated with jokes that had everyone laughing through happy tears. When the judge pronounced them married, the cheer that rose could have powered the entire city. Life after the wedding settled into a rhythm both ordinary and extraordinary. They bought a house in Brooklyn with a backyard big enough for weekend barbecues and future family gatherings. Grayson stepped back slightly from daily operations, promoting Ezra to co-CEO so they could build the company together as equals. The scholarship fund grew, now supporting over 50 students across the country. Grayson's mother became a regular visitor, bringing homemade pies and stories from Connecticut. Even his father started referring to Ezra as my son-in-law with only a slight hesitation. One quiet evening in their new home, Grayson and Ezra sat on the back porch watching the sunset paint the sky. 1.5 years had passed since the night that changed everything. The scar of that slap had faded from Ezra's cheek, but the memory remained, a reminder of how far they had come. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't panicked that night? Grayson asked, his head resting on Ezra's shoulder. Ezra smiled into his hair. We might still be pretending, or worse, apart. That moment forced us both to grow. Grayson thought about all the pieces. The betrayal that wasn't, the family that learned to love differently, the friends who stood firm, the self he had finally claimed. He had lost illusions but gained truth. He had risked everything and discovered that real love was worth every sacrifice. As the stars appeared overhead, Ezra squeezed his hand. We made it. Grayson kissed him softly. And we're just getting started. In the end, the journey of two men who found each other in the middle of misunderstanding and fear proved that acceptance wasn't given. It was chosen, day after day, with courage and grace. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs and it was enough. Was denying your true self ever the right choice? Or did it only delay the happiness that comes from living honestly? True or false?